Now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. Reality star Eboni K. Williams has recently announced that she is pregnant with her first child. Now, Eboni K. Williams came on mainstream media to let everybody know that she is pregnant with her first child, a baby daughter that will be born in August, and presented pictures of herself with a baby bump that she was extremely proud of because she was going to have this baby through in vitro fertilization without a father. Now, this whole announcement has me shaking my head regarding Eboni K. Williams because Eboni K. Williams basically shows me the whole sad paradigm of the proud black woman and how that proud black woman would rather maintain her pride and take a fall rather than admit that her approaches to life just don't work. Now, Eboni K. Williams is one of these single, successful, educated black women that basically is following the dysfunctional model that was presented to young black girls in books like Terry McMillan's Waiting to Exhale and many other books that were produced during the 1990s that showed us the plight of the single, successful, educated black woman who just could not find a man. And what's really sad about Eboni K. Williams is that as she follows the model that was presented in those books, is that she winds up participating in the feminist indoctrinated behavior that I talk about in my book, The Woman Crisis, and also participates in the paradigm of failure that I go into detail in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. And what happened with Eboni K. Williams is that she is one of these single, successful, well-educated black women who basically is following the models and approaches taught to her by her single mother, who was one of these feminist indoctrinated women who was a bus driver, cosmetologist, and entrepreneur, but I have to wonder if she was just a bus driver and a Avon lady, and she's following in the footsteps of her mother, thinking that that model would lead to her having success, but the whole thing is that she is on a paradigm of failure that was taught to her by her mother, and what's really sad is that she's going to pass this on as a way of life to her daughter. Her daughter is just going to follow in her footsteps, and what's going to happen is we're going to get 3 generations of this paradigm of failure that I have seen happen in the black community for studying it for over the last couple of years. And as I've studied the entire history of black women from the 1960s forward, I just see how generation after generation winds up completely single because they continue to follow these white feminist ideals instead of seeing the reality of how these approaches are keeping them single for the rest of their lives. And what's really sad here is that this is being passed on as a culture from generation to generation, and all of these girls are not really learning how to work in a relationship with a man and not understanding how to work in a relationship with a man because they learned from their grandmothers how to be strong and independent, and that was what was passed on to Eboni K. Williams by her mother. And what's sad is that Eboni K. Williams' daughter is having this passed on to her in the next generation and not really learning how to work with a man in a relationship. No, what has happened here is that due to white supremacy, what has happened is that these 3 generations of women have taken on feminism as their standard, and because they believe in white supremacy more than God, what they are in is following in the footsteps of a model that tells them that they need to be the head of the household and they need to be the leader. They have basically been beguiled like Eve, who thought that she could know like God. And what happened with Eboni K. Williams is that she thinks she knows like God because she's single and got these college degrees And because she's educated, sadly, she's not smart enough to see that she's on a road where, yes, you've got economic success, but you're not having any sort of success as related to relationships because you don't know your role as related to God's order. And because Ebony K. Williams doesn't know her role as related to God's order, she can't find a man to follow the lead of and be a helpmeet to him. No, instead of her wanting to be a helpmeet, what you have with Ebony K. Williams as related to the paradigm of failure is that she wants to be the one who is the head of the relationship, and she wants to be the head of the relationship as related to black men. As related to black men, she wants to be the boss over the relationship because, like her mother, who was indoctrinated into the white supremacist institution of feminism, what she believes is that a black man is not smart enough to be the head over her. The black man cannot tell her what to do. And most importantly, she believes that she is better than a black man. So she believes she does not have to submit to the leadership and authority of a black man. And because Ebony Williams has her degrees and her money, she believes that she doesn't have to respect or regard a black man. And that's her whole mindset as related to black men. However, when it came to Ebony K. Williams as related to white men, she basically looked to break those rules because what she wanted to do was have a place in the system of white supremacy and was so desperate to have that place in the system of white supremacy that she was looking to submit to a white man who was already married and possibly divorced. And as she looked to submit to that white man, what she did was create a covert contract during the COVID-19 pandemic, hoping that this man would look to make a commitment to her. However, once the lockdowns came down and that white man started to fear his own mortality, he basically wound up cutting ties with Ebony K. Williams. And as he looked to cut ties with Ebony K. Williams, this is where Ebony K. Williams got the rude reality regarding white men and how not much has changed regarding the modern white man in the system of white supremacy and his ancestor, the slave master in the slave plantation. Because what Ebony K. Williams was hoping to do with her covert contract was she was hoping to have a relationship with this white man where she would possibly be the woman in his life and he would hopefully eventually marry her. But what happened with this white man was he basically saw Ebony K. Williams the same way many white men in white supremacy see black women, as a fetish and a side piece. And as he was having his fun, basically getting her to drop the skid mark Fredwicks of Hollywood thong and allow him to put his Vienna sausage in the atomic waste reactor for some nuclear fusion where he could get a glow-in-the-dark Vienna sausage, this white man basically was having his fun and having his taste of chocolate. But Ebony K. Williams, being the single, successful, educated black woman, really was not educated on white supremacy and racism because she didn't have a black father in her life to tell her how it ran with white men. And Ebony K. Williams basically got turned out by this white guy who, after he got his taste of chocolate on his Vienna sausage, decided to go on and go to his family during the COVID lockdowns, and that left Ebony K. Williams really distraught as related to this relationship, because what she was hoping for in that relationship was she was hoping to, after he got his taste of chocolate, she could go out here and have herself a white chocolate biracial baby. That was what Ebony K. Williams was hoping for, but after that whole deal wound up falling completely apart as related to her whole relationship, Ebony K. Williams was basically out here lamenting the loss of that white man and lamenting that she could not find a man that she could have a relationship with. But the reason why she couldn't find a man to have a relationship with was because, one, she deified and worshipped white men, and two, she had been taught by her feminist mother not to respect or regard men, And 3, she didn't know her role in God's natural order. And because she didn't understand her role in God's order, this is why she could not find success in a relationship as related to marriage. Because as related to many of these feminist indoctrinated women, like I talk about in my book, The Woman Crisis, many of these women do not know how to work with a man in a relationship, and that's where Eboni K. Williams has a problem. She doesn't know how to work with a man in a relationship because the feminist indoctrination has her looking to see a man as a rival and a competitor. And because she's competing with the men in her life, she is not a woman who is compatible for a relationship because she's basically another adversary to him. Now, what I talk about in depth in my book, The Woman Crisis, I talk about how many of these feminist indoctrinated women basically are incompatible with men because there can only be one person who's the head of the relationship, and because the woman who's been indoctrinated into feminism wants to be the leader and does not trust and have faith in the man to do what God wants him to do, what she does is look to undermine that man, and that's what makes that whole situation completely incompatible for a relationship with a man. Because what's really sad about feminist indoctrinated women is that they're programmed to look to be the leader in the relationship, and as they look to be the leader in the relationship, they look to compete with a man, and that makes it where there's a power struggle, and that power struggle really undermines all of the relationships that the feminist has, because the feminist doesn't have the faith in God to trust him and trust him to give her the man and submit to the leadership and authority of that man. That's a major problem for most of these feminist indoctrinated women. It's a real problem because they sit there and say they want a man, but they won't go out here and follow the Bible as related to relationships, and they won't follow the standards that God established, because God established a standard where he told women that they were made for men, and they were made to serve men, and they were made to submit to the leadership and authority of men in his order. But women like Eboni K. Williams don't have any faith in God, and they don't trust him to give her a man that would provide for her needs. And because she doesn't trust that man to provide for her needs, what she does is want to be in the leadership role, and sadly, arrogantly believes that she knows better than a man, following the same pattern that Eve did when she took the forbidden fruit and listened to the serpent, who told her that she could go out here and know like God, even though they already knew like God. But the sad part is because of her arrogance and, again, fear, that's what led to Eboni K. Williams going out here and having this attitude just like Eve. And again, she's just so arrogant, and again, just so all of that is arrogance is basically based on fear of not trusting that man. And again, she sits there and wonders why she can't have a relationship with a man. Well, it's because she doesn't really have faith in God or trust God to go out here and be the one who will provide for her with a relationship with a man. And because her relationship with God is a complete mess, this is why her ability to have relationships all fails with men. And as her relationships with men just failed, what sadly she's done is gone out here and took herself intentionally on the road to single motherhood, mainly because, again, that pride and that arrogance basically are the thing that keep her on this road. And what's really sad is that even with a licensed therapist like Iana Van Zant trying to talk to Eboni K. Williams, the therapist could not even get a breakthrough, because I believe this woman was so indoctrinated into white feminism and so spellbound by white feminism that she would rather stay in that black box that's acceptable to white people rather than come out of that box and grow mentally and spiritually. That is one of the saddest parts I see with Eboni K. Williams, is that she's one of these black women who would rather, again, like I talk about my novel, Spellbound, look to fit into this black box that's acceptable to white people, and look to fit into that box to the point where she would rather participate in detrimental decisions to her own personal life. And that's the saddest thing about this whole situation. I mean, this decision to get pregnant without a father in this child's life is one of the worst decisions she could make. But because she's so desperate to get that acceptance from white people and stay in their good graces, she's willing to destroy her own personal life. And that just shows how deep the psychological damage that white supremacy has on the black female mind. I mean, when I think about this whole situation with Eboni K. Williams, it really makes me think of the recent book I wrote, ISIS Dark Incubus, where I talked about how white supremacy has such devastating damage on the black female mind. And this Eboni K. Williams situation, where she's pregnant by herself, basically shows how deep the damage is on the black female mind as related to white supremacy, that a woman would rather go out here and have a baby on her own through in vitro fertilization rather than look to submit to the authority of a black man and trust him to be her protector and provider. Again, showing me how deep the whole mindset of white supremacy is in her mind, because you would basically, again, yield to white supremacy but not yield to a black man. And that was shown in the conversation that Eboni K. Williams had with Iyanla Vanzant. Now, Iyanla Vanzant is one of these black feminists, but even she couldn't get through to Eboni K. Williams and have that breakthrough that would lead to her breaking out of the paradigm of failure. That just shows you how deeply spellbound this woman is as related to white supremacy, because when Iyanla Vanzant tried to sit down and talk to Eboni K. Williams about what was keeping her single and offered her the option of getting involved with a bus driver, Eboni K. Williams basically wound up saying she didn't want the bus driver, even if the bus driver had good values and character. And what Iyanla Vanzant was doing with the whole thing with the bus driver was basically using that bus driver as a code word for black men. And that code word for black men, bus driver, basically was saying, hey, here's a black man of good character. Would you want to get involved with him? And as Iyanla Vanzant made that statement, Eboni K. Williams went out here and denounced and scoffed at the idea of being with a bus driver, which she correlated with a black man, because black bus driver reminded her of her mother and the black men she was involved with. So instead of even looking to even consider a black man, what we had with Eboni K. Williams was she continued to go on in her delusion, thinking that she could find this high-value white man, continuing to go on in those delusions to the point where she says that she wanted to have what she wants on her terms and wants to have it on her terms. And if she can't get a white man, what she's now doing, because she's desperate, is going out here and looking to have this child through in vitro fertilization, basically showing her contempt for black men, that she doesn't want the seed of a black man, I believe. No, what I believe she wanted was the seed of a white man to have herself a biracial child. And this is what I believe she's possibly going to be pregnant with. I believe that she's going to these lengths because she basically doesn't want it to have black children or a black family. And even more so, she doesn't want to have a black father in that home, being the one who's the head over her. Because as the strong, independent black woman, she's going to have control over her child, and she's going to raise her child on her terms. She's going to have her child her way, just like her mother did. And because she believes that she got her college degrees and she got her big-time six-figure jobs, She believes that her daughter will be successful like she was and her mother, but know that she won't have any success at all, because what's happening with Eboni K. Williams is she doesn't understand what Christ said about a person gaining the world and losing their own soul. Because when I look at Eboni K. Williams, she's a woman who basically wound up losing her own soul. Yes, she's got success in this world, but she's never borne any fruit of the Spirit. And because she hasn't borne any fruit of the Spirit, because her mother raised her as a child of the corn, she grew up a child of the corn, getting all of these thorns and briars, and that's really made her spirit bitter. And as she's grown all these thorns and briars, what she's done is grown up like a stalk with no sense of structure or order and no understanding of how to work with a man. And what's really sad is that she's going to pass this on as the first teacher of her child. As the first teacher of her child, what she's going to do is pass this dysfunction on to her child. And instead of going out here and making a child who would follow God, she's going to make a child who's going to become a twofold child of hell, and in the next world and in this world wind up on the road to becoming the third generation of women in crisis as related to her family. And that is the whole saddest part, is that this child, yes, she's going to be born to a successful woman, but that child will not really get any sort of spiritual success because she won't have any connection to a real father, and she won't have a connection to the Father in heaven. And again, without that father, what happens to a lot of daughters is they wind up like Eboni K. Williams. They wind up extremely insecure. They wind up not getting their emotional needs met. And without them getting that emotional security from that father, what happens is these women don't really have that internal locus of control of themselves to be able to feel secure. And because they don't feel secure, it makes it where any relationship that they have with a man is one where they are insecure. And eventually they wind up having that relationship fall apart because these women just cannot trust a man. And that's the whole paradigm, the part of the paradigm of failure that Eboni K. Williams is passing on to her daughter. Yeah, she's going to be out here talking about how she's got this great legacy that's passing on, but that legacy isn't one established in God. That's the saddest part about Eboni K. Williams. She's thinking, oh, I got my degrees. Oh, I got my money. But again, the rich man who had the barns and the storehouses thought those things, and Jesus called him a fool because he didn't know what the next day was or how his soul was required of him. And with Eboni K. Williams, she's basically one of these women who really doesn't understand what she's doing spiritually and how her soul is required of her. I mean, I think that the whole situation with Yana Van Zant was God trying to talk to Eboni K. Williams, but sadly she was just too proud to admit she was wrong, too proud to admit that her life approaches just don't work, too proud to admit that she is on a road that's not working. And again, because she was still holding on to her pride, this is what has her on the road to thinking single motherhood is an option. And no woman with good self-esteem and self-worth thinks that single motherhood is an option. No, women of good character will sit there and understand they need that father in that child's life, because the worst thing you could do to a child is not even allow their father to be in their life. And without that father there, again, to put the structure around that child, what you're doing to that child is basically messing them up, making them insecure, making them emotionally unstable, and making it where they never really can understand how to have faith or how to trust another person. And instead of them looking to be a woman who can, again, have a relationship with a man, what Eboni K. Williams is making a daughter who will basically be a mini version of her and just as dysfunctional. That's what's happening here with Eboni K. Williams. And sadly, with Eboni K. Williams, she's so caught up in her pride, she cannot see how this pride is going to lead to her making not only a spiritual fall, but a personal fall, because what happens with women like this is that they're so proud, and as related and to their whole situation. They say they're going to raise their child on their own, but eventually what happens to that child is, because that child winds up having no father in their life, they wind up becoming an embarrassment. And that embarrassment eventually comes about 12, 13, 14, 15 years later, as this child is looking for the love of a man, looking for the love of the father in her life, and again, not having a connection with the father because the mother has taken her so far away. And sadly, Eboni K. Williams, again, one of these miseducated black women. Again, educated does not mean smart. That's what people have to understand about women like Eboni K. Williams. Yes, she's single, successful, and well educated, but she's just not smart enough to know how to make a relationship work. And because she's not smart enough to know how to make a relationship work, sadly, she's winding up taking the next generation of children down the same dysfunctional road that many other kids are on, like Halle Berry's kids, basically on a road where they don't have that man to give them guidance or structure or order, and just wondering what's going on. Again, that's the saddest part about today's modern black woman. Today's modern black woman would rather go out here and have a fall and say that she is all right, rather than accept help from a black man. No, she is so wedded to white supremacy, she refuses to submit to the black man that God has given her and follow his leadership and guidance. No, she would rather walk away from those blessings from the Lord and would rather stay in the system of white supremacy, a single mother. She would rather stay in a bottom position far below that the black man would elevate her to. And that's it's one of the troubling things with women like Eboni K. Williams, and it's one of those things that's going to keep them single for the rest of their lives. And again, this woman belligerently remains single out here and remains single all by herself, saying, I gotta do it all by myself. No, she would rather not work with the bus driver as related to having a relationship with healthy children. No, she would rather go out here and be dysfunctional in the system of white supremacy, being the strong, independent black woman, because she can continue to maintain a covert contract with white men and hopefully hope that some white man will go out here and look to have a relationship with her. This is the delusion I believe that Eboni K. Williams has as related to her whole paradigm of relationships, and sadly her whole paradigm of relationships has her on a paradigm of failure, and that paradigm of failure sadly is happening here with Eboni K. Williams being yet another one of these black women who is one of the 70% of black women who are single. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to many of black women like Eboni K. Williams winding up on this paradigm of failure and learn how to break it, you can pick up my books, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, and The Woman Crisis on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And you can also pick up both of those books at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to check out the reason why women like Eboni K. Williams would rather fit into this black box that's acceptable to white people rather than work with a black man, you can pick up my novel Spellbound, which goes in depth on the whole spellbound mindset of dysfunctional black people and how to break out of that whole spellbound mindset. You can pick up that novel on Amazon.com, along with Why 70% of Black Women Are Single and The Woman Crisis. And you can also find Spellbound at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, the iBookstore, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and you can find it at big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me do more videos taking celebrities to the barbecue, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. Sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS Legacy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available for the first time in paperback, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. Learn all the reasons why so many black women can't find a husband and why 70% of black women are single. Get your copy of Why 70% of Black Women Are Single on Amazon.com today. now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.